Hello everyone, in today's video we're going to go through the big first step in getting started with VATSIM, and that's going to be your first flight. Now, over the last couple of weeks, we've been showing all sorts of different flights and requesting all different services, but many of you are still a little nervous as far as trying it out. So I'm going to show you a great way to test it without having to really stress yourself out too much. So we're sitting here. This is a Goodspeed Airport. This is in Connecticut. This is actually southern Connecticut in the United States. This is a teeny little tiny airport right on the river. One of the reasons I picked this one today is just to pick something that I'm pretty confident nobody else is going to be in a big rush to actually go ahead and run down, so you don't have to worry about it too much. The real world, by the way, there's this massive bridge right here that literally goes up to here, but unfortunately we don't get to see that, which is kind of a bummer because it makes this so sketchy. So what we're going to do is we're going to do literally everybody's first favorite flight. This is with no air traffic control. This is just, I want to do VATSIM, but I don't really want to stress myself out about it. So just get me in the simulator. Let me see what it all looks like without panicking, kind of a thing. So let's go ahead and do that. So first things first, what we want to do is I'll go ahead and flip modes here real quickly so you can kind of see everything that I can see. Is I always like to double check to see who is above me. So if I actually go onto the website, it's going to look a little bit like this. It's called map.vatsim.net. You can actually see this neat little map, and it'll show you where everybody is. If you press the ATC button, it'll light up everybody as far as air traffic controls. Like I can see there's somebody at Memphis. There's a ground control at Philadelphia. Coming out to Los Angeles, it seems kind of early in the morning for Los Angeles, but hey, if you want a challenge, feel free. But I notice up where we're parked, which is going to be right where my mouse is. It's a teeny little airport right down here. I notice that there's no controllers above me. The other thing I know is if I pop on SkyVector real quick is that my airport itself is an uncontrolled, and it's outside of everybody's airspaces. You can see we're sitting down here. There's no airspaces around me. We do have some echo because of Chester, which has a couple of approach procedures, but I'm not going to worry about it too much today. Again, we're just trying to sneak in here. The next thing I want to take a look at is what the weather's like. Like right now, I noticed that this is very marginal VFR, but inside the simulator, by the way, you can only fly with real-world weather in VATSIM. I went ahead and tested these ceilings. These ceilings are about 1,800 feet, so that's going to decrease, again, the likelihood of somebody kind of getting in our way today, so I'm not going to stress about that too much either. So now that we have all that stuff kind of in mind, we're just going to do basically a takeoff, run the traffic pattern, and land it, and I'll walk you through the individual calls. So let's go ahead and grab our vPilot content here, our little component here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here and press the connect button. It's going to ask us some stuff. We're going to go ahead and type in 152. That's us. I love how you can actually search the codes here. We have no CellCal code. We're not airliners, so don't worry about it. So I'm going to press the connect button. So as soon as you do that, that's going to say connected to voice server. Now, the way the voice server works is whoever you're actually on our radios inside the program is who you're going to be talking to. There's quite a few voice channels. So because this is an uncontrolled airport, it's not in anybody's airspace, nobody owns it, we're going to be using 122.80. So let's go ahead and get this little old school plane get started. This is such a fun plane to be in the real world because it's so tiny. But again, things like this, just in my mind, just make it a little more enjoyable. All right, it looks pretty good. We're going to go ahead and crank it. Shouldn't take too much getting this thing going. The oil pressure is in the green. Everything is ready. I'm going to go pull that throttle back just a tiny bit. Looks good, looks good, looks good, looks good. Just going through all my options, all my buttons. I love this airplane because the frame rate is spectacular, and it's easy to fly, and you don't have to stress yourself up about it too much. Like I said, it's just really cool. So I'm going to go ahead and turn on my radios here. This is old school. You have to actually hold your mouse. And one thing you're going to want to do is you're going to make sure your transponder is set to 1200 in the United States, 7000 everywhere else. And it's pointing towards the word alt, which simply means we're providing altitude encoding, letting people know where we are. So let's go ahead and set up our radios now. So the frequency we're going to want, because we're communicating with what they call Unicom, which is just a generic frequency, is 122.8. Now, some of the pilots in the real world might sit here and go, oh, wait a minute. That's not the correct frequency for Goodspeed. And you're sitting there saying, well, what do you mean it's not the correct thing for Goodspeed? Well, if you take a look real quickly here, if we actually open up the data about Goodspeed, you're going to see that it's going to have a different frequency. In this case, by a bizarre coincidence, our CTAF happens to be exactly the same CTAF as it is in the real world. That's not going to happen often. For example, if we came on here and let's say we want to do Simsbury Airport. We come over here real quick and hold it over there. You'll notice that the CTAF frequency is 122.7. Regardless of the CTAF frequency, you always use 122.8 unless you're talking to some air traffic controller departure procedure. So even though if we were up in Simsbury, you'd be using this, and you're not. Oh my God, gas is $6.29 a gallon. I remember this was like $4.15 a gallon. I can't believe how expensive it's got. All right, let's get rid of that for now. So now that we have the correct frequency selected, now we just have to communicate to all the good folks out there who are going to be interested in listening to us. One thing I recommend doing for every flight is to file a flight plan, even if it's something really mundane. So I'm going to go to flight plan real quick. I'm going to come down here to VFR. We're going to say I'm departing 42 Bravo, which is, like I said, it's going to be good speed. We're going to come down here, 42 Bravo. Yes, you can do that. No alternate departure time. Remember, you have to make sure you have the correct time here. So they use UTC time, not to get confused. It's 1408. So I'll go ahead and do 1410 is going to be my departure time. Time en route, 5 minutes. Fuel available, we get 530. Cruise speed, yeah, right, 90. And cruise altitude, I'm just going to pretend it's 100. So now what I like to do is I like to come down here, and I'll say under traffic pattern, I'll do this one, closed traffic. Now, the whole point of this is basically to say, hey, I'm just doing a quick little rip around the pattern here. You don't need to worry about me too much. And this is just to help other controllers, if they see you online, know that you're doing this. Now, if we're actually flying somewhere, take the time, but that's a totally different video. Don't stress about that today. So now that that's done, we have voice options. Send, receive, or text. I'm a fan of send and receive. For those of you who are brand new, feel free to use text if it makes you a little bit more comfortable with the flight. Again, it's totally up to you. Don't stress about it too much here. So once this is done, I just press File Flight Plan, and that's it. That's all you had to do. Now we are ready to go. Technically, our block time is 2 minutes from now, but I'm not going to worry about that too much for our purposes. Go ahead and flip over to this mode. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pretend like I'm in the real plane. We're going to look around for traffic. We'd be listening on the radio to see if anybody calls in and lets us know that, hey, I'm about to land the plane at this particular spot. Otherwise, we go ahead and make our call. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and release my parking brake, give it just a tiny bit of gas. Remember, the lights that you have turned on are the lights that you actually have turned on. I know that sounds like redundancy, but it actually isn't. It's just that other people have to be able to see you. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to kind of taxi around. In the row 152, you can just go on the right brake, and you can snap this thing in the tightest turn you've ever done in your life. So now what we're going to do is we're going to make our first radio call. Now, again, don't panic too much here. It's not nearly as scary. And since we're at an uncontrolled airport, we're just basically going to say, hey, we're going to be taxiing along this runway that's directly in front of us, and we're just going to tell everybody that we're doing it. The way we do that is we call what they say a back taxi. So go ahead and pause this for a second here and take a look. You can see that my runway is 14. If we taxied on 14, we'd be taxiing on 14. But we're actually interested in tree 2. We're going to be back taxiing this whole runway. It's going to be a nice bumpy takeoff like it is in the real world. I love it. So let's go ahead and make the call. So you're going to say who you're talking to, who you are, where you are, what you're doing. Good speed traffic, Cessna Red 64 is back taxi runway, tree 2, good speed. That's it. The only thing I did not do is, in the beginning, is announce who I was talking to directly. But again, as long as people have an idea of where you are, you'd be. A better call would have been good speed traffic, Cessna Red 64 is back taxi tree 2, good speed. That would have been a little bit better. So now we're just going to get going here. We're going to zip right down the runway. Again, remember, you're responsible for your own traffic clearances because there is no air traffic control above us. So the wind is coming behind us and quartering a little bit, so I'm going to go ahead and make sure my controls are set appropriately. Enjoy the bumps, by the way, because it's going to be like this the whole ride up today. Usually when I say people take their first little flight here, I recommend taking in a slightly bigger runway. But again, the reason I chose this one is it's out of the way and the clearance above our heads is just big enough to allow us to kind of sneak in here. So I can see that it's a bit of a little nasty here. I'm going to go ahead and poke my controls into those. It's going to be a crosswind takeoff. It's going to be a crosswind landing. But I believe it's supposed to be 6 knots gusting 8. So it's not bad for us in the little 152 here. Now keep in mind, you need to be listening at all time to make sure nobody else calls you and says, hey, I'm trying to land at good speed here or something like that. In which case it'd be panic mode, but I wouldn't worry about it too much here. This runway, by the way, in the real world is a little easier than you see because there's actually no trees there because they cut them all down so that you could actually safely land at this runway. But it really is a tiny runway. All right. So I'm going to come over here. Now, in the real world, we always run the airplane up. I can't recommend this enough. I know that many times people skip this step, but it's one of those things. I'm just going to poke myself into the wind here as best as I can. Go ahead and pop my brake. I always do a basic run up here just to make sure everything works okay. We're going to go up to 1,700 on the revolutions per minute scale. That's a lot of revolutions. And we can even do 1,800 if you want. It really doesn't matter too much as long as you're within 100. So now we're going to go ahead and kick the key to the left. We should get a drop. Kick it to the right. Kick it all the way to the right. We should get a little drop of RPM. We do. Go ahead and do that. Now what we do is we pull the carburetor heat all the way out. We should get a little bit of power. Now we're going to smoothly pull the throttle all the way to 0 and see if the engine cuts out on us. So if you're playing with real world, failures and things like that, this is always a really good practice to do. Go ahead and kill the carburetor heat. Now we're good to go. So now we're simply going to announce our next intentions. By the way, before you come tearing down this runway, it's a good idea to do that whole process back there on the taxiway. But for our cases, like I said, this is going to work well. In the real world, you're going to see little turnouts for this. So now we just go ahead and announce our intentions. Good speed traffic, Red 64 is taking off runway tree 2, good speed. So that's it. So now we're just going to bring ourselves back over the runway here. We're going to go ahead and get going. This is a short field, so I'm going to go ahead and pop down 1 notch of flaps, make things a little bit safer for us. Remember, runway behind you is useless. So in a little plane like this, I like to try to get as much runway as I possibly can. Obviously, you could go all the way down to the grass and bounce around in the grass if you want maximum performance, but I'm not going to worry about that too much today. I'm going to go ahead and line ourselves up. You can see just how short this runway is. So we have wind coming out of our right, so I'm going to go ahead and take my controls. Go ahead and make them visible so you can see what I'm doing here. I'm going to pull them over to the right like that. I'm going to stick my head up a little bit. We're going to go ahead and apply full power. The aircraft is going to crouch down. And we're going to release the brake, and we're going to go ahead and go ripping down this runway here. Now, in a Cessna 152, this is not a heavy plane. So once it kind of gets going, you have to start backing the ailerons out. Otherwise, you're going to put a lot of pressure on that one tire. And we start climbing just like that. Go ahead and as soon as you get airborne, look out the window, check out the runway below you, make sure you're properly lined up. We actually got to be careful with these things now. So our goal altitude here is going to be 500 feet for our first left turn. So if we wanted to, we could actually announce our current position. Good speed traffic, red 64, upwind, good speed, 2-2. So all basically we said is we're just going upwind here, which normally you'd want to say what's your upwind before you do that. So now all we have to do is pop up our flaps now that we're over our flap retraction speed, which will give us just a little bit more airspeed as far as the zooms goes, and we'll hold about 65 knots or so. Again, in the real world, there's a huge bridge right there, and it's terrifying when you fly at it. And again, no stress, no scary controllers. This is just us experiencing things for the first time. Good speed traffic, red 64 is left crosswind for tree 2, good speed. And there we go. So now they know we're on our crosswind leg here. We're making our way up to about 1,000 feet, which isn't too bad. Again, remember, you have to fly the plane. That's kind of the part people forget a little bit. All right, I'm going to look up for my left wing here, see how we're doing. Looks pretty good. We're going to go bring ourselves into downwind in just a second. I just want to get a little bit more room away from that airport. Delightful. Good speed traffic, red 64 is on left downwind for tree 2, good speed. So now they know exactly where we are, and they know exactly what we're doing. If we wanted to be a little more specific, we could even mention what altitude we're climbing at. But again, because this is a relatively simple example and it's your first time out, don't worry about that too much. There we go. Now we can see we are now downwind. So I'm going to go ahead and bring us a little bit to the left. That wind's pretty significant. Go ahead and pull the throttle back and prepare for landing. I'll bring myself a couple blasts of trim here. Again, it's a 152. You don't have to stress too much about it. You can already see exactly just how sketchy this runway is, but it's perfect for examples. And we are safely underneath that ceiling, believe it or not. That's a 1,700-foot ceiling. We need to be 500 feet below, and we're here at 1,100 feet, which is plenty. But start really slowing down here. Bring that nose down a little bit more. Nice turbulence today. I love it. And we're about to beam the numbers. I know you're sitting there saying, that's a beam? Yeah, that's a beam the numbers. So we don't have to call anything. If we want to be really specific, we could say that we are beam the numbers to help people out, especially if there's like 30 people in the traffic pattern at once. I'm not going to worry about that too much, though. What I am going to do, though, is I'm going to get ready for landing. There we go. Start slowing down just a tiny bit here. Again, we're looking for about 45. We're going out to sea here because of the incredible amount of wind coming out of the direction. So basically, we're going to use that lake as kind of our little position here. So now we're going to make our call. Good speed traffic, red 64 is left base for tree 2, good speed. And now we just proceed right along our little base turn. So now in this aircraft with the base turn, we're going to pop down that next notch of flaps. I'm going to go ahead and increase power a little bit. One thing I do get kick out of this plane is it's just so slow. It's just like, you just take your time. I love it. It is definitely a good plane for people who are learning to fly. You know, you're not going to be fighting things. You're not going to get behind the airplane. Everything's going to be nice and stable most of the trip. So our next call is going to be a final. We can also call a short final. Short final, in my mind, is less than 2 miles. Make sure you do provide direction. Like for this airport, we could have taken a right traffic, but honestly, there's like a mountain right there, and I don't know how much fun I would have had trying to land on that mountain there. So I'm not going to stress about it too much. See, it's all set up and ready for landing. Go ahead and pop on our landing light real quickly. Delightful. All right, let's do it. I love the flaps in this thing. It's like, you may not move anymore. It's so much fun. So our next call is basically going to be good speed traffic. Red 64 is on short final for tree 2, good speed. And that's as much as we got to say. Start slowing the plane down a little bit. You can see I'm a little high, but that's all right. Kind of aim off to the side here. Again, remember, we've got that really nasty crosswind, which is going to make this a super fun landing. And you can see that in the real world, there's actually, like I said, an opening of trees right here that you can kind of sneak the airplane into. But we don't have that luxury here. Start slowing down, get us a little bit closer to our speed. A little bit less altitude, and let's turn final. Good speed traffic, red 6-4, short final, tree 2, good speed. And then we're going to lift the nose up so I can see where I'm going here. And now we just land the plane. That's all there was to it. A little bit of left foot here. And like I said, we got a little bit of that wind, which is going to be kind of making things interesting for us on our landing. So now all you got to do is worry about safely landing the plane. So I can see that crosswind's still coming from the right, so I'll go ahead and fly slightly sideways here, as you can see. And we're going to go ahead and kill the power. We're basically going to coast this thing in. Gotta love the 152. Get over those trees. Looks good. All right, nice and easy. I'm going to hold the nose up. Going to bring that right wing down, use the feet, center the feet right as you hit the ground, and we are down. A little bit of right aileron. Nice. All right, so now we're going to make our way all the way to the taxiway here. Again, make sure you keep those controls correct, otherwise you're going to have a real fun time trying to set up this thing. See, I got my controls all the way into the wind there. Hold the brakes. And the reason I held off on the brakes until the very end is so I could get myself. So the last call we got to do is just let everybody know that we're out of the way. Good speed traffic, red 6-4, clear the runway. That's it. Red 6-4 is clear of the runway at good speed. Yeah, don't forget that part. People get confused. All right, we're going to do a little happy bouncy thing. We're coming right back from which we came at the beginning. All right, hopefully this video encourages you to go ahead and try this out yourself. Like I said, that was it. Everything was completely on VATSIM. I didn't do any like weird shenanigans or anything along those lines. So when I'm done, usually what I like to do is I go all the way up to the taxiway, and as soon as I get there, just reach up here and push the disconnect button. Now, if you want to see something kind of fun on our way out, let's go ahead and grab this real quick, see if it's visible. This is always kind of fun. And zoom in a little bit. Yeah, there we go. Let's go ahead and show this off. This is kind of fun. That's us. So if you actually go to this mode, you can see our entire little journey here. Obviously, it's been simplified a teeny tiny bit, but you can see just how strong that wind is. Other than that, hit the disconnect button and enjoy.